Well, good morning, everyone. Um, let's go ahead and get things kicked off. For those of you that have been a part of Action Coach things before, there's a particular way we like to start every session that we do, even if we are here on Zoom, and that is with a little bit of a stretch to get the body woken up and ready to go. So we'll do kind of a seated, quick little version here. But hands up, everyone, stretch up to the sky. Yes, that means everyone. Yes, even the cat. Beautiful. Over to one side, you choose. I don't really care. Go to the other side. Quick lean back. And bend down. Kind of touch your toes or whatever's close. And that should get us ready to go. Kind of wakes up the brain, wakes up the body, gets us ready for some learning, things like that. Biggest reason why we run through this here. So to get us started, I think we've got a couple newer faces on the call. It's a relatively small group, so I always like to just with these being fairly interactive, I like to just kind of go around and make sure that everyone at least knows who everyone is. So let's just do a super quick intro. We'll just do name and what your business is, and we'll just kind of leave it at that as we go through here today. But Hakan, would you kick us off with name and tell us just what your business is?
I'll be happy to. My name is Håkan Lindstaff. I run an e-commerce business called DMX Pro Sales, sell electronic products and specifically light controllers.
Beautiful. Julie, I'm going to go over to you next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Hutchinson. I'm the CEO and founder of Core Performance. We are a stress and resilience and neuroscience training company and home of the Wake Up Happy Challenge.
Beautiful. Thank you. Heidi.
My name's Heidi Garbo, and I own Garbo Lobster here in town. We have 3 restaurants and a few food trucks that roam around.
Yum.
Excellent. Richard.
Wait a minute. You're in Austin?
I am.
Lobster in Austin?
Yeah, not easy.
If you have not had lobster rolls from Garbo's, you are missing out.
I'm missing out. I gotta go to one of your places. Do I just Google Garbo's?
It's in the old Fry's Center on Mopac.
Oh, I might be there tonight, Heidi.
Yeah, the old Opal Divines.
Yep.
All right.
I may have been there once or 20 times.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's awesome. Richard.
So my name is Richard Avery with Titanium Computing. We're a full service MSP cybersecurity shop. I hack people. I'm the hacker, you know.
Love that. Shannon, we'll go to you next.
Shannon Hempel, I own with my husband Leaf Tree Services. It is a full service tree removal, trimming, certified arborist.
Very cool. Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy. I run a business with my husband, Philip Skid Steering. We do gravel and granite driveways as well as horse arenas. It's a new one.
I was going to say, I don't remember hearing about that one before.
That's a new one. That's a new one.
Good for you. A new channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Alex, we'll go to you next.
Hi, I'm Alex Anapol. I don't see myself, so I don't know if you can see me, but
yeah, we can see you.
Okay. I am an interior designer in Austin, and my business is my name, Alex Anapol Design, and I am new to Action Coach.
Beautiful. Welcome. And Jean, I don't see you on screen yet, but if you would just pop on screen quick and tell us who you are and what your business is.
Hi, I'm Jean Zeller-Pendry. I'm the owner of AOB Construction LLC. We are a premier fencing company, install chain fences nationally and other such things locally.
Beautiful. Well, thank you and welcome everyone as we go through and kick off the day with some financial stuff. I think a few of you are with me for a few times today, but lots of wonderful learnings, things like that. So as we get kicked off, let you all do kind of a quick intro. I should probably do a little bit of an intro for myself. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tanner O'Brien. I am one of the senior partners and co-owners here in our firm. I'm also an investor and a coach. My background is in banking. I was a loan officer, mortgage banker, most recently with Bank of America on the Merrill side. I've got over 8 years of experience in real estate and business and economic development through some nonprofits. And my expertise, my area of just like joy and what I love doing is finance, operations, and marketing management, which is all the stuff that's derived from numbers, which is why you're all here talking about numbers and finance today. My background or my degree is in psychology. Got out of school and said that is not the direction I want to go. I want to do something different, and it's led me to the path here within our firm. Now, what's really exciting is I was looking back and doing some research earlier this month, and over the last 3 years that I've been a part of our Action Coach firm, we've been able to grow our business by over 560% on top line revenue and 866% on net income in only 3 years by using the things that we'll be reviewing today, getting the base foundation, things like that. The only reason I put that statistic in there for you today is to really express and help you understand that the things that we're going to go through today, for those of you that will see that are with me the rest of the day or will watch these things later on, are all things that we do consistently in our business. This isn't just theory, it's stuff that we heavily do and have had to learn and go through ourselves. And the results are showing for that. So that's kind of the reason I shared that with you today. As we go through, there's going to be really 6 buckets of things that we're going to cover for this morning. First one is, what is money? In order to really understand our financials in business and going through that process, we have to first understand what the heck is money. The second is our relationship to it. Third is, why do we even track numbers in the first place? Why is that so important for our business and the success of our business? Then we'll move into kind of laying the foundation, financial statements, and understanding kind of the differences between the financial statements that we should be looking at on a consistent basis. And ultimately, how do we get started? Now, we've got a grand total of 90 minutes together this morning. My intention here today is this is meant to be very interactive. The way I've even got my screen set up is the slide deck's over on this thing here, and I've got you all right in front of me. As we go through, we will take as much or as little time as we need on each of these 6 buckets. Wherever you all have questions, I want you to interject. I want you to throw thoughts, questions, things like that in, because at the end of the day, this is for you and implementing in your business. If I just sit here and talk at you for 90 minutes, it's very difficult to implement things versus if you have specific questions, things like that. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead, throw your questions in the chat, come off mute, raise your hand, whatever it is, be involved, ask me questions. As likely the question you have is a question that's on or in the back of somebody else's mind as well. So that's kind of how we'll go through the format for today. With that, I've got a couple rules of the game that I like to abide by when we go through some learning things here today. The first one is the only failure is the failure to participate. So give 100% and you'll get 100% return, which is exactly what we were just talking about. So jump in, share thoughts, all of that kind of stuff as we go through. Fair enough?
Yes.
Some nods ahead. Yes, perfect. I love it. Second one is this beautiful thing here. I know many of you have seen this slide before, but these 2 beautiful words of I know are often the biggest killer when it comes to learning things. Why? Because when we say I know, I already know this. You know, Tanner, I've heard this before. I know it already. Usually a wall kind of goes up in our brain. It becomes difficult to look at things from a different perspective or to learn it in a new way. Newsflash is, I'm not really going to tell you anything that you haven't heard before. There's going to be a lot of things that you've heard, you've seen, you've come across in the past. And the reality is that's okay. There's some relearnings. There's things that I'm going to encourage you to look at a little bit differently. So how we're going to get through this is by removing these 2 words and changing it to, isn't that interesting? Everyone's favorite 3 words when it comes to the Action Coach firm. So with this, kind of the best way I like to express it is, when we go through things that you've learned before, that you've seen before, that you've experienced before, my guess would be that you are not the same person, the same place in business, the same business professional that you were 6 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 20 years ago, depending on when you first learned some of these things. You've had different experiences. You've had different encounters with different things within your business. And by going through this now may spark some different ways of looking at things. So I'm going to ask you to just kind of keep an open mind as we go, ask questions. There's no such thing as too difficult or too simple of a question. Ask them all as we go through. The final thing here is it is bright and early, 9:15 in the morning on a Thursday. So I'm going to ask you all to have a little bit of fun as when we get things kicked off here. So those are the three kind of general rules as we go through today. Can I get a loud yes from everyone if we can abide by these rules as we go through the next 90 minutes or so?
Yes.
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 Woo!
All right. So let's start off with the basics. What is money? What are your thoughts when it comes to the definition of money? How do you define what money is to you or to your business?
It's a tool.
It's
Cool. I
necessary.
love it.
It's necessary.
Necessary.
A line that I have heard from Action Coach that is stuck in my head is money is inventory.
Inventory. Yes. I love that one. Other thoughts?
Security.
Security. Beautiful.
Leverage.
Leverage.
Um,
Beautiful
that-
words.
A metric on how well your business is doing.
Metric on how well your business is doing. Well, I really like that one.
Headache.
Headache. Could be.
Sometimes.
Excellent. So when we look at kind of our definition of money, and there's a number of different ways we can look at it and think about it and contextualize it. At its core, very essence, it's an idea that's backed by confidence and it's exchangeable. So what does that mean? When we think about an idea, it's a concept, a construct that we think of, and it's backed by the confidence of a group of people. So as an example, here in our country, the government has backed the idea of a fiat currency that is the US dollar. That is an idea that is backed by the confidence of the US government, and it's exchangeable in our economy. That's all it is. You could easily go back thousands of years and think about how did they exchange for goods and services way back when. It could have been livestock, it could have been chickens, it could have been precious metals, it could be anything, right? It's an idea that was backed by the confidence of the people that were using it, and they could exchange it for goods and services. That's all money is. When we're able to take kind of that step back and look at what is money from this context, we can start to remove some of the things that come along with kind of the concept of money today, which tend to be emotional. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move to the next step here. So with this, all of the things that you all said are insanely important when it comes to the definition of money. Richard, you're absolutely spot on when it comes to inventory. It's just an exchange unit. It's how do we move things through the business and be able to circulate at that standpoint. So that's kind of our just general definition of money. I don't want to get too deep on this piece of it. I want to allow us to kind of keep going. But what questions or what thoughts kind of come to mind now kind of seeing this definition up on the screen?
I think some thoughts for me are, it is an idea. I mean, money is an idea that we've all agreed to, and our relationship to it is important in how we view it, our beliefs, because our beliefs have so much to do with how we interact with it. And if we have a negative belief around it, we tend to, I know that if there are times in my business when I was struggling with it, it was hard and it made things difficult. When money flows and I'm having a really good quarter, I tend to feel a little bit different. So my relationship and my beliefs about money, whether it's we're doing really well or we're not doing well, impact how I feel.
That is amazing, and is a perfect segue into our next kind of bucket of things to chat about today, and that's our relationship with money. So when we look at the relationship with money, there's kind of the three things that I've kind of outlined for us to discuss, and I think Julie, you've actually touched on a handful of these already. But it's what is our current belief system with money? How have we been taught to think about money over the years? What habits do we have, both at home and in our business? And then finally, what emotions do we have? And this is, I don't know, maybe one of my favorite things to talk about is the emotional ties when it comes to money and how that impacts what we do. So let's talk a little bit about belief systems. And it's really important to kind of address what our belief systems are around money. If we don't have it understood how we think about and manage money, it's going to be very difficult for us to do it within our business. So when you think about money, what are the beliefs that you have around money? So we talked a little bit about the definition of money, and I think we've thrown out a few things in between there, but what are some beliefs that you have, or kind of words that come to mind when it comes to money? So I've heard, Hakan, you mentioned a headache, right? That's a way to look at it. Inventory was mentioned. What are some other words that come to mind when you think about how you individually think about money in your personal life or money in your business?
Freedom.
Freedom. I love that.
Growth.
Choices,
Absolutely.
or options.
Necessary.
Stressful.
There's an honest answer. What else kind of comes to mind when you think about money? Obviously, in this type of a group, there's a lot of positive words when it comes to options and freedom and things like that. But what are some of the other things that come up?
Shiny.
Let's say shiny. There you go. You have a phenomenal month.
Lifestyle. Determined.
Lifestyle. There you go.
The more money you have, the more wealth you have, which is not always true.
I also think that money is power, in the sense that if I have a whole lot of money, I have the power to give it away. I have the power to help other people in a way that I wouldn't be able to help them if I were broke. So it gives me, it's also a responsibility. I think the more that I have, the more I want to share and help the world become a better place.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Right. Who's some folks I haven't heard from? Jean, Heidi, what are some thoughts that come to mind when you think about money?
Not enough.
Not enough.
True. For me, current belief is that I don't know. The not enough thing comes up, but it's also unpredictable.
Mhm.
Unpredictable. There you go.
That's a good one.
I have a little saying when it comes to money, but it's more in my sphere of influence, which is money's really easy to take, but it's much harder to make.
I think one of mine that I'm really struggling with right now is we have hired our first employee, and it is so important to, and we have 1099 people, so it's not like we haven't had anyone, but I feel such an incredible responsibility, especially in this world's economy, to make sure that these men are able to provide for their families. And that money thing just scares the crap out of me, because it weighs on, I mean, we have payroll coming out, and I'm like, holy crap, every week. And it's not just about me and my own bank account anymore.
I concur with that. It's like, I pay probably anywhere from 12 to 20 people a week for payroll, and cash flow right now in this economy, in my industry, is very unpredictable. So it's a lot of stress and a lot of managing anxiety and losing bunches of sleep, losing a lot of sleep.
Yeah, anxiety. There's a good one. That's one I haven't heard in a while. Who
There's
here
also-
at least has felt at some point in the last couple of months some anxiety around either their finances or just money in general, either in business or personal?
Yeah.
Definitely me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the part of feeling that you're not in control. I'm thinking like inflation and interest rates and stuff like that affects you, but you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Not lack of control. There's a lot of things that kind of come up with our thoughts around money, both positive, neutral, and negative, right? There's a lot of different things that come up at different times. And it's important to kind of understand that. And the reason is we got to look at this slide here. How many of you are familiar with the identity iceberg or have seen us kind of go through this process in the past?
Yes.
Yeah, a couple of you. Tracy, you've been around for a while. How many times have you seen this particular slider? Have we gone through this with you and Chris?
At least 3, probably.
Do you mind giving us kind of a high level overview of your kind of understanding or how you would kind of talk through some of the key points on the importance of this slide?
Oh my God. First thing in the morning without my coffee. I'm trying to like put my thoughts together.
Put you on the spot.
I know you really did. Usually I'm pretty good on the spot, but this one I'm like, I guess I'm just not awake enough. No.
No worries.
I'll take a crack at it.
Go ahead, please.
I've never seen it, but I'll take a crack at it. We all know that 90% of the iceberg is underneath the water, but most of us focus on what's above the water. So we look at our actions, our behaviors, and decisions is where we typically operate. But in reality, if we can really work on our beliefs and our values and our identity, that creates the environment that we're in. And that sets the tone for our actions, behaviors, and decisions. So the most important thing is we have to build our beliefs around money that empower us and live in our values with our identity.
Dang, gold star.
Good.
That is pretty darn
Dang.
good.
I could not have gotten that out.
We'll have to express some extra coffee over to you, Tracy.
Yeah, right.
No, Julie, you're pretty much spot on with most of that there. And it's important to look at, because at the end of the day, when we think through money, in most cases, it's the results. That's the end result of kind of the actions, the behaviors, the decisions that we choose. The important thing to remember is that the actions that we take or the behaviors that we exhibit all are derived from exactly what's below the waterline: our skills, our beliefs, our values, and ultimately our identity. Now, they are in a specific order for a reason. Our skills do ultimately determine kind of what our decisions are and the types of actions that we're able to take. If we don't have the skill set to do something, we have to develop the skills before we can take specific actions. But the types of skills that we choose to develop is based on our belief systems, is based on our values. If we are in a position, as an example, where we don't believe that we deserve a certain amount of money or profitability or level of wealth or whatever it is when it comes to money, oftentimes it becomes a bit of a challenge to truly develop the skills necessary to create those. So our beliefs determine the types of skills that we tend to develop over time. Now, where do our belief systems come from? Our values and our identity. Think back to your childhood. Think back through kind of how you were raised and the types of environments you were in over a number of years. How was money discussed at the dinner table? Was it discussed at the dinner table? Did you talk through different investment opportunities, or was money always that taboo subject that nobody wanted to talk about? The closest friends that you had, or your family members, how did they talk about money? All of these things influence how we look at it today. And if we're not proactive about shifting our beliefs and our values. So there's no right or wrong to any of it. It's just important to take a step back and say, what has been the environment? What types of values and identity has been instilled in me over time? And if I want to have something different, if I want to become a better manager of money, I want to become better at X, Y, and Z, what do I need to shift internally in order to develop those skills and have a different level of actions, behaviors, decisions, and ultimately the level of results that we want to achieve? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we're talking about at the very beginning here has to do with the fact that we've got to kind of bring ourselves up to a place where we can move into this point where we can manage and understand our finances in a high level way. It's one of my favorite kind of I say it tongue in cheek. One of my favorite things to hear is, some business owners that state, I'm just not good with the numbers. I don't know finances. I'm just going to, hand that off to somebody else, that sort of thing. But in reality, simply by stating that and having that belief system, they never develop the skills to actually manage their money. By being here today, you're already surrounding yourself, the water and the analogy here, in an environment that's going to allow you to develop a different identity, a different belief system around finances, money, and all of that kind of stuff that allow you to have different skills, different actions, behaviors, and decisions in your life as you move forward with finances. Y'all with me so far? Y'all look super excited about this.
No, I really just got how I'm living my life in my 50s with the same beliefs that I had as a teenager growing up about money. I mean, that just really brought it all together. Like, holy cow, I have not changed my beliefs about money since I was a teenager based on how we grew up.
Hmm.
I'm ready to shift that.
Beautiful. I'll give you an example. There, just the other day, I must have been listening to a video or something, and somebody was talking about having $1 million a month in take-home profit. I was like, dang, what would it be like to even have that? Just kind of thinking like there's no way. And then I had to stop myself and go, whoa. If I think that's not ever possible, and like, what would that even be like? That's already changing or leading me to an inhibiting belief system versus, well, how can I achieve it? What would that look like? What would how can I actually imagine what life would be like if there was $1 million a month in personal income? The moment you can start to imagine it, the ability to move forward with it grows. But if we just say, I can't imagine it, it's just too far out there, then there's some growth that needs to happen in order to make that happen. All right. So we talked a little bit about belief systems. How about habits? Let's talk a little bit about habits for a moment. What types of habits do y'all have either in business or at home when it comes to money and finances?
Have to work hard to earn it.
Work hard to earn it. What else? What other types of habits do you have?
I'm a saver, and I don't believe in credit cards.
There you go. Heidi, tell me more about savers, or that you're a saver. Consistently, do you have a habit behind it, or is it just whatever's left over is saved?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I started my first business literally before Square or PayPal or any of that. So it was a cash business. And so I literally had envelopes, and I used to put in the envelopes what I needed in order to survive and make the business successful and profitable. And I kind of just continue to do that in a different way, obviously now with bank accounts, but yeah, you can't spend it before you have it. And you have to make sure all your bills are paid and that you have the cash flow.
Beautiful. Those are amazing habits. Thank you for sharing that.
I love that. Can't spend it before you have it. I have that same one.
What are some other habits that you all have? Or habits that you don't have that stand out?
My current belief system on money is that paper money is fake. So when I'm saving, I'm transferring that out into a harder asset, regardless of what that harder asset is.
Cool. I like it. Others? Anyone follow a budget, either personally or in business?
Yes.
Consistently? Seen some people excited about the word budget, some of you not so much.
Budgets just aren't flexible enough.
I think the way I grew up, budget was it was a negative connotation. It's kind of like going on a diet. it's not about what you feed your body. Diet has that connotation of your withholding something from yourself instead of thinking about it as medicine for your body, food as medicine. And growing up, a budget just meant that you were poor. We have to spend it, and that's how the mindset was. And so when I have a budget, but in my head, I still have that I have to have a budget just because that's always changed, not in a way of freedom. I have this budget so that I can have freedom. It doesn't work. I logically know it. It's just not hardwired in me.
I kind of feel the same, but I also feel like budget doesn't also mean poor. It just also means you just want to be financially stable and you're trying to make better decisions. Running your own business, you don't have a stable paycheck like the 9 to 5. So I was always a budget person. I always knew exactly how much I'm making. And now running a business where my husband is just like, Monday is abundant. It will come to us. Don't worry. Never stress. Even though, no phone calls are coming in. We're not doing any estimates. Have no worries. It will come. And I'm just like, oh my God, I need to know how much we're making. I need to kind of have a budget. And it's really having to like change my mind frame of, no, this is going to work. We just push harder. We can make it happen. Like we do have more control than we think. And being with Action Coach for the couple years, 3 years, whatever we've been with you guys a while, it's slowly changing my mind because I've been uncomfortable, delivering big numbers, and it's just because I'm not comfortable with it. And, to have customers go, oh yeah, no problem. Sure. Like I have to like hide my expression of like shock and awe of like, oh my God, I would never pay that much or something like that. So yeah, it's slow sometimes to change habits for me at least, but I'm seeing when I do change my mind frame and when I get more comfortable with it, it makes the job easier, it makes the career easier, and I am a little less stressed over it.
Cool. Richard, do you have something to add?
So there's someone who I've done work with in the past, and they did a lot of personal coaching. They were a dating coach and a rapid dating coach. And he was trying to pivot into the business sphere and do business coaching and personal lifestyle coaching and wealth coaching. And he noticed that the moment that he bought a Maserati and he started going to customer engagements with the Maserati, he was able to add a zero to the end of all of his quotes and his budgets because he was now radiating a different expectation from the customer side and displaying that he had more wealth and value. And if this wasn't going to work out, like he's got other stuff to do.
Talk about a change in belief system. I like that. Alex.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different situation right now. It's my first year in business for myself. And so this is the first time that I've ever had to really manage this unpredictable income. So I feel like everything that I knew up until this year is just gone, and I'm in this weird blank slate stage where I don't even know how to manage my own money because of what Tracy was saying. Like, you don't know what's coming next. You don't know if people are going to go for what you're offering them. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm here to learn as much as possible and shift my mindset as well.
It's fantastic. Thank you. While we're still on kind of the topic of habits before we kind of shift on, how frequently do y'all look at your finances, both either personal or business? How often do you look at them?
Every morning.
Every day.
Yep, every day.
Every week.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Same time every day?
Yeah, always in the morning as soon as it hits.
Good. So these are examples of some of the basic habits to start getting into, right? Do they necessarily need to be the habits that you hold longer term as you master and get better at finances? Maybe not. It'll depend on you and your business and your situation. I'll tell you, for us, for the last little over a year, maybe a year and a half. Every single morning starts with reviewing our finances, like 20, 30 minutes. I'm looking through every single transaction, like what's going in, what's coming out. I'm getting so deep and granular on it so that we can get really good at understanding what's actually happening in the business. But this was a habit we didn't have, over a year and a half ago. And unfortunately, that put us in a pretty tight spot when it came to cash flow. So going through this process, that's a habit that I started to incorporate. Personally, I chose to also do that in my personal life, not on a daily basis, but at least on a weekly basis. Every probably Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, I take a look at my personal finances and do the exact same thing that I do in business. And it's completely shifted the game in terms of what my personal finances have looked like this year. Why? Because it worked in business. It ought to work for our personal lives as well. So these are just examples of different habits. Now, I want you to, I can get the slide to change. I want you to write this down. Some of you have seen this and written it down before. Some of you are newer and have not seen this yet. So I'd like you to write this down. Am I in the habit of having money, or am I in the habit of not having money? So I'll give you a moment to write that down. Am I in the habit of having money, or am I in the habit of not having money?
I wanted to say that it made me think of, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, my microphone's been funny lately. But mine is, am I in the habit of having money, or am I in the habit of spending money? And so there's a big difference in that. And so as more money has been flowing in, getting used to letting it be instead of feeling like, oh, now I need to buy all these things, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I literally did that last night. I was like, it's still Black Friday and I just got paid something, so I'm gonna go get what I've been needing to get.
I've been working on instead just like thinking about, okay, how much can I get in there? How much can I get in there to stay in there, just sitting there? So, that working on that number increasing in my personal account instead of just spending.
I like it.
Yeah.
Thoughts from anyone else on kind of this statement or this question? Am I in the habit of having money, or am I in the habit of not having money? What comes to mind, or what? Yeah, we'll just start with that. What comes to mind when you see this?
This is where my budget comes into play for the business and for me personally, because I know that money that comes in isn't necessarily my money. I have to look at how to allocate it to the future for upcoming liabilities in the business, before I can look at what's in it for me. I guess I grew up with the philosophy, good Protestant work ethic. It's like you got to do all the work stuff before you can have fun stuff. So I don't even look at having money. I'll just see it there and then go directly to, well, what type of expenses do I coming up, and whatever's left over is what is the having money part, just if that makes sense.
It does. Yes. I'm going to give you one more kind of thing to write down. It's not my slide deck. It's usually something I bring up when we talk more about kind of wealth creation, things like that. But I would recommend writing this one down as well. The money that you make is not yours to spend. The money you make is yours to invest. The money you make is not yours to spend. The money you make is yours to invest. When you get into the habit of having money to invest, now the investment could be into long-term savings. The investment could be into additional team members or paying team members more. It could be into actual assets in your business or in your life that are going to create more cash flow for you down the road, right? There's a number of different ways to get into the investment piece, which is not kind of the point of this morning's topic. But it goes with the habit of having money. When we have the money, we have the inventory of money. So going back to Richard's statement at the very beginning, when we have the inventory of it, we can deploy it in different ways. We can only do that if we get in the habit of having it first. So the question is, what shifts do you need to make to start getting into the habit of having money, both personally and in business? So we talked about our belief systems. We've discussed habits. What emotions? Is there any emotion tied to finances and money?
Oh yeah, a lot.
Probably the most important thing for us to kind of just address on this, which kind of brings to get everything together, right? We've been talking a lot about kind of business and personal together and not specifically on business stuff, which is kind of the rest of the conversation this morning. The reason I bring it this way is because the emotional piece is so important. If you are financially stressed at home, if you are worried you can't make your mortgage or rent payment, this next month, and you don't know how you're going to put food on the table, if there's that level of stress in your personal side of things, that emotion will bleed over into your business. The types of decisions that you make in your business will be from a place of scarcity rather than a place of abundance. And I will tell you, I have felt this firsthand, and it sucks.
I like to view money as and that comfort feeling as the more I don't have to feel it, the more I can future plan. If I don't need to worry about 1 month of business, I can plan out month 2. If I don't need to worry about 3 months of business, I can plan out month 5, 6, 7. So the more capital you have of a comfort, the easier it is for you to plan forward. And the poorer you are, you're worried about day to day. How do I eat? How do I pay my employees? How do I buy inventory? The more you have, it's that you're able to stare at the checking account and you're able to look at your budget and say, I've got 3 months of finances. I'm set. Now I get to plan for month 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
The way I view things.
Yep. And it gives you more runway to make, we'll call it corrections. It's probably not the right word to use, but if you've got 3 to 6 months of runway, whether it's in your personal bank account for just you to live, or it's in your business, or a mix of both, when you've gotten in the habit of having money and you're not stressed personally because there's no money there and you're not sure how you're going to make ends meet next week or next month, you have the ability to say, it's okay. If something doesn't go the way that I anticipate it to in my planning, I know that the business isn't going under. I'm not losing my house or something like that over the next month. Now I can make different decisions and change different actions to ensure that I get the results down the road. But this only happens when you've got a level of security behind you, which is why everything we've talked about so far is so critical to start with. If we don't have those foundations in place, it becomes very difficult for us to make logic-based decisions in our business and be able to move things forward. The other aspect of this is when you're stressed about money, whether personally or in business, how likely is it, do you think, that your team members and those around you will feel some of the stress and anxiety that you're exhibiting?
Very likely.
Yeah, it's hard to truly get rid of those types of things. It's going to happen. It's a natural phenomenon of us just being human. So the more we can address this up front, the more we can focus on these foundational pieces, allows us to get into a position where we can remove that stress level, which will ultimately make everything a little bit easier. All right, so that's relationship to money. Now we can get into the fun stuff on why we track our numbers and getting towards kind of understanding financial statements, that sort of thing.
I have a
So why
question.
do we track our numbers? Got a few things on here, but what comes to mind on why it's so important to be tracking numbers in business?
To know what our actions should be.
Was it
Actions
just
should be,
me that
absolutely.
lost a little bit of audio there from you, Tanner, for a little bit?
Ooh, did everybody else experience that too, or no?
No.
No,
I didn't have any
just me.
issues.
No.
My side. All right. Thanks.
Why do we track numbers? What are some things that come to mind? Why do you track numbers? Do you track numbers?
For
I'm-
a
I'm
lot
looking
of
for-
reasons.
I'm looking for job costs. Like to really see if I have effective crews installing product in a timely fashion that will impact my net profit if they're not being efficient and effective. So it's a way to look for bottlenecks in the operations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, effectiveness is a big one.
Yep.
So, I mean, some of the key points that are on the slide. I mean, we can go through a couple of these, but when it comes to numbers, we got to know not just the historic numbers, which think, you know, your profit and loss statement, actually seeing what was revenue last month, or what was profitability, or what was the expenses last month. But we also got to look at the ones that are going to create the future. So these are going to be things like your KPIs, like what are the activity things that are driving those today that we'll see results on here in 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. The biggest challenge that we've seen, that I've experienced, including in our own business, is the ability to make no decision because we just don't have the information. We don't have optics. We don't know what's going on in the business. We're just guessing. We're throwing a dart at a dartboard with our eyes closed and hoping that we hit something that makes sense. By tracking, you know, our numbers consistently, we have the ability to start seeing what's actually happening and can make decisions ahead of time. And that's the key. We do have to track it consistently. If we're doing it sporadically and just kind of checking in every once in a while, it becomes difficult to know, are they accurate, first of all? And how do we manage something if we're not measuring it consistently? So when we look at numbers, you know, they're a reflection of the decisions that we've made in the past. So when we look at our revenue numbers, we look at our profitability numbers, our expense numbers, all of those things that you might see on a historic report, like a profit and loss, all of those are results of decisions and activities and things that we've done in our business over that last time period, or even further. You know, if we didn't go out and make sales calls, or we didn't, you know, do X, Y, and Z, it's going to show in our revenue numbers, our sales numbers. Likewise, those numbers that we see today are going to influence the decisions we make in the future. So if we can sit here and say, hey, my revenue numbers, my activity numbers were down this last month, I need to make a change. Now those numbers will influence the decisions we can make to change our activities, to change things moving forward, so that we can correct and make or achieve a different result than we had previously. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
When we understand our numbers, this leads us to being able to make greater confidence in our decisions, better investment decisions. So as I mentioned before, when we accumulate capital, money, it's inventory. It's a way that we can deploy that, so we can make it, we can make better investment decisions. So think of team members as an example. We know we need to hire new team members down the road. If we are measuring our results consistently, we're measuring our finances consistently, and we have confidence in the decisions we're making, we can actually choose to invest better. We can say, I know that I need X team member because this is going to lead to this. And I can see that causality through the actual numbers, through the actual metrics in the business. Getting through that emotional component that we've talked a little bit about already, when we understand our numbers and we know it consistently, we actually can make logic-based decisions versus emotional-based decisions. Gives us the awareness of, like, what are our actual abilities, where might there be some gaps, how do we properly examine some of the issues that may be out there, and be able to make, you know, specific changes along the way, which all leads to improved cash flow, which is something that I'm sure everyone here on the call would like more of, is improved cash flow. So knowing our numbers leads to each of these things. This is the core reason on why we track our numbers consistently in business. The two keys to Money Master, the two keys to being able to do this effectively is budgeting and reporting. We control our resources by budgeting. And I do dive deeper into budgeting and kind of cash flow forecast in the second segment, I think, today. So if you're on it, we'll dive into it deeper then. If you're not on that one, you're going to get the recordings of all of these later on. So make sure you go back and kind of watch those later on. But budgeting is, you know, the way I like to frame it, which maybe will help with the context of, you know, some negative connotations around budgeting, is I like to look at it as the must achieve or can't exceed. So not only do we budget for our expenses, which is I can't exceed these particular things. I'm setting a budget for X, right? I'm setting a budget for our phone bill, it can't go higher than X. Like that's what our budget is. That's kind of the can't exceed side. We also should be budgeting and setting standards for sales, for revenue, for things that are coming in as well. And those are the must achieves. So when you're setting it up appropriately, you're actually looking at both the income and the expenses when it comes to budgeting. We also control our resources through management reporting, which is again something that I will talk through in the second session a little bit deeper. But essentially, how frequently do we report and look at these financials on a consistent basis? So for those of you that are checking your financials on a daily basis or a weekly basis, let's say eventually you have a CFO in place that has to send you a report on a weekly basis. What's in that report? What's it look like? What information do you need to be able to see to make the decisions as the owner of the business? It's kind of the key of management reporting. Management reporting is important because we look at like what time scale. Again, I'll dive into this deeper on the second session, but we look at what's the frequency we get them and what time scale are we reporting on. And the best way to look at this is take our profit and loss as an example. Let's say we look at annual data or even quarterly data, and we want to see what was our revenue for this last year. If I get a report that has only annual data on it, I just see year to date, here's revenue, here's gross profit, here's expenses, here's profit, right? I look at all of those things, I can see it on just an annual basis. That tells me something very different than seeing annual data that's broken into each month. I see January, February, March, April, May, all the way through. You can see different trend lines. As an example, let's say I've got a business that does $1 million top line and did $100,000 in profit. And that's all I can see because I just have an annual report. What I may not see is maybe when we open that up and see month over month over month, maybe they had $900,000 worth of revenue in December, and all the rest of their expenses were in every other month. They took a massive loss for 11 months out of the year and then made all their money in the last month of the year. It tells you something very different from a cash perspective, like how much capital do I need to be able to manage those first 11 months? You can't tell that unless you see a report that has greater data. So when you look at management reporting, when we get into that deeper in the next session, those are the things to kind of think through and consider is what is the time scale that I'm seeing this data on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So let's talk about laying the foundation. I always like to kind of bring this in to help frame up everything that we talk about within Action Coach and kind of where we fit in the cycle today. So how many of you have seen this context, the 6 steps to building your business? Hopefully just about everybody on the call has.
Yes.
Alex, you might be one of the few that haven't really gone deep into it yet.
No, I haven't.
So really there's the 2 frameworks within Action Coach that we talk about that go into every business that allows us to build businesses that work and become an asset so that you don't have to. First one is the 6 steps. We build on mastery, and then we work on niche, which is marketing, and build into leverage, which is systems and processes, and then layer on team. Eventually you've got synergy where there's duplication and ultimately results on the top end. In order to do it, we have to kind of understand what's in each of these blocks. Financial mastery, the things that we're talking through today, the things I'm talking through all day today, fall within mastery. It is that important that it is one of the cornerstones of the very bottom of this pyramid, because it eliminates chaos and it creates stability in the business so that you can layer the next phases on. So I like to just kind of give you that roadmap of where is this in the grand context of building the business. We talked about the 5 ways. In the 5 ways, essentially what we're talking about is revenue, profit margins, and profit. And that bottom portion of the 5 ways. Leads, conversion rate, it's going to be more marketing and sales. Number of transactions, average dollar sales is going to be more customer service with kind of some mix of marketing and sales in there for repeat business, that sort of thing. Everything that we're talking about from a mastery within our financial numbers tends to fit within kind of those bottom couple pieces of the 5 ways. So again, just laying the foundation of where is this in context with the things that we guide you each through when it comes to building your business longer term. You with me on kind of the path of where we are today? See some nods. Yes.
Yes, and by the way, are we going to get copies of these slides?
Slides, maybe, but you will get the recordings of all of this for sure.
Okay, great.
All right. So that's where we are in kind of the journey overall in building the business, going back and understanding some of the foundational pieces. Now we can spend kind of the remainder of our time today talking through financial statements and how we get started, which is kind of more the technical, exciting piece of where y'all want to go, I'm sure, is talking through financial statements and understanding them and all of that fun stuff. So let's start with that. Starting with financial statements. Is everybody familiar with what the financial statements are?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of.
Or for those of you that said yes, what are the 3 financial statements?
P&L.
Balance sheet, profit and
P&L,
loss
balance sheet,
statement,
And cash flow.
cash flow. Absolutely.
cash flow or AR report.
AR
That's
report would be a 4th one I would throw in there.
Balance sheet?
But kind of the 3 core would be profit and loss of your income statement, the balance sheet, and then your statement of cash flows. How many of you are running all 3 of those consistently today?
I am.
Cool. A couple of you.
You said, wait, that third one is just, what did you call it? Actually, what's the official term for it? The cash flow one?
Statement of cash flow.
Okay.
That's at least that's how it would be worded in like QuickBooks or something like that. It's going to be either cash flow statement or statement of cash flow is typically what you'll see for that one.
I will say for the longest time, I was, my accountant wasn't doing monthly, like keeping up with everything monthly. And so it would be kind of a general idea when I would look at my P&Ls. But now that he switched to monthly, it's so enlightening. I'm like, oh, I can see it so much more clearly now that all those changes have been added in monthly.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. So a couple of you are getting all 3 of them. How many of you are at least getting either the P&L or the P&L and the balance sheet consistently?
I'm doing all 3 consistently.
Cool.
I'm actually doing all 4. I use
Beautiful.
the AR report a lot too.
Yeah.
Good.
Since I don't have any employees and I manage cash flow more like to buy inventory for my e-commerce business. For me, I do the monthly P&L, but then cash flow, I basically just look at a bank account and see, okay, I have enough to place another order with them at vendors.
Definitely varying degrees depending on the business that you're in and how things are structured. But beautiful.
Tanner, can I ask, because he said something about, just looking at the bank account, and I remember doing that for the longest time. Where are you at with profit first? Because I use profit first, and I definitely feel like it changed my world. It gave me so much peace of mind allocating that money for inventory and IRS and all of that. At this point, though, I am getting to a place that I have to change those numbers because I need to use my owner's pay more to invest back into the business for more executive roles and stuff. But the profit first, it saved my life in the beginning of figuring out how much I should be spending on inventory and such.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of it. And it circles us all the way back to the habits, right? The habit of having money. That's like a core tenet of that piece. If you pay yourself first and you put it into a profit account that's aside from everything else, that's going to guarantee that you've got that ability to get in the habit of having money. I will tell you, we've gone to that general type of a context even in our business. We've got a profit account. We put a certain percentage of revenue in there, so not even just profit at the end. We actually put essentially profit first. We put a certain portion of revenue in there, and then from there we can determine what piece of that are we going to take as distributions and what piece are we going to leave in there for future investments, because now we have the ability to say we're going to invest in marketing and we're going to grow that, or we're going to invest in a couple different team members that are going to allow us to accelerate the growth pattern. So yes, personally, I'm a big fan of it. I do it in personal and we do it in business. Is every week or every month there's a level of nope, this money gets moved over and guaranteed we're going to get in the habit of having the money.
I think for me, it was less about my pay and my profit, even though that's the whole general idea of it, is to pay yourself first. For me, it was, again, pulling out the IRS tax money, pulling out the sales tax money, and then me being in retail, I knew, again, inventory. Those were game changers for me, is knowing, okay, I sold this much, and I do it every week. I sold this much last week, so that's how much I can put back into my inventory account to refresh everything. So instead of doing those emotional purchases.
Absolutely. It's an amazing habit, amazing discipline to get into. Absolutely. Excellent. I appreciate you adding that into kind of the conversation. So let's talk about accounting records first before we really dive into the financial statements and kind of understanding each one of them and why we look at them consistently, which is where I'd like to spend kind of the vast majority of our conversation today. First, we need to kind of understand what type of accounting are we on? Are we on a cash basis or an accrual basis accounting? How many of you know which one you're on? If you're running as accrual or cash?
I do. Accrual.
Excellent.
We're cash.
Okay.
I'm cash.
Cash. Perfect.
Cash.
Also cash.
I think I'm cash.
Grace is on accrual. Anyone else on accrual at this point? Anyone not know?
Honestly, I don't really know, but I'm also very new to owning my own business. I talked to my accountant about this, but I'm still a little confused.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about it, because I want to make sure that we at least have context with it. Alex, if I had to guess, this is totally a guess, but if I had to guess, more than likely you'd be on cash. Most folks, when they start off, are going to be on a cash-based accounting system. It's when you kind of start getting into it, your business starts to grow and kind of looking at things a little bit more complexly. That's when we usually start to make that shift over to accrual. Kind of the really simple way to put it is cash-based accounting is essentially things get booked onto your financials, like on your P&L, when cash changes hands. So essentially, I make a sale today, you pay me today, it's put onto the profit and loss as a sale today. Likewise, if I make a sale today, but you don't pay me for 30 days, that's not being counted as a sale until that 30-day mark when we actually exchange cash. That's kind of the basis of cash accounting. Same thing for expenses. If I have expenses and I don't actually have to pay it for 30 days, then it's actually counted as an expense in 30 days when that cash goes out of my account. Accrual basis then is going to be income and expenses are counted when they are transacted, when they actually occur. So if I make a sale today and you don't pay me for 30 days, regardless, that is being counted today because the actual transaction took place today. Same with the expenses, right? So that's kind of the easy way to kind of understand the difference between cash and accrual. Usually we recommend making the shift eventually to an accrual basis. Anyone want to take a stab at why it's important to start looking at things from an accrual basis versus a cash basis?
When you want to sell your company?
Absolutely. That could be a big one.
Well, it also is a better metric of how your, a measure of how your sales metrics are, because if we do all of this tracking, we actually make the sale. I mean, there's the sale instead of waiting 2 months.
Absolutely.
Well, it's better for forecasting, right?
Absolutely it is.
Actually, I thought I was cash, but now I'm actually not so sure.
I think I am cash. My only thing is I charge hourly for my time, and then I have income with like purchases with goods. So I have two different forms of income, and so I bill every month, but it's based on the hours that I stacked up for the client in the last 30 days. So it's a little confusing, but I think it is cash.
Yep. Out of curiosity, Alex, when you bill somebody for services rendered, do you give them 7 days, 10 days, 30 days in order to pay that, or do they pay right on the spot when you send them a bill?
I give them a week, but my good clients pay me the day I send them the bill. So on the first usually, and I kind of know, you know, if they're going to be a good client, if they start paying me as soon as I send them a bill. And so, yeah.
Cool. Excellent. So as like a super simple way, because I don't want to make this more complex than it needs to be. I want to kind of give you the easy way to kind of understand the difference between cash and accrual basis and how that can look for your business. When you think of cash basis, let's say you send that bill and they pay you 3 days from now. When that cash actually comes in, like they click the button, they pay the bill, cash comes in, transaction happens, it's going to be recorded at that point. So let's say you sent the bill today and it doesn't happen, and they pay on December 2nd, it's going to count as a December sale, not a November sale. Versus accrual, the moment you send that bill, like through the system or whatever, it's counted today. So that would then count as a November sale versus a December sale. That's probably the easiest way to just contextually look at it. So obviously if you have longer lead times, I know like Gene, as an example, your business likely has much longer lead times, which is why you're looking at AR reports, things like that, different payment terms, etc. So all of those things kind of come into play and it creates more complexity, but on a very simple basis, it's basically cash. Whenever the cash transaction happens is when it's counted. Accrual base, it's whenever the actual transaction itself happens, regardless if the actual money has changed hands. But back to the point of why cash or why accrual, probably the easiest way, again, there's a number of different things to look at, but from a simplicity standpoint, is we're starting to understand the difference between the two and why we would do one or the other. And we're talking about metrics and measuring our finances. Accrual basis is really important when we start looking at activity metrics. If somebody pays 30 days from now and it was a result of a transaction that happened today, that was a result of marketing that took place today and kind of this month. If all of a sudden I'm looking at a cash transaction and I see on my historical financials that the transaction happened at the end of December, even though technically it happened in November, it's hard to attribute what marketing spend, what metrics, what activity, what things were happening in the business that drove that sale. When we look at an accrual basis, we're able to kind of start to measure and line those things up a little bit easier, which again allows us to make different types of decisions, or ideally better decisions in the business, as we forecast and as we plan and know what activity leads to the result. That's personally why I like the accrual side of things. Again, most of you will start on cash basis and then eventually shift over to accrual as you start to get deeper into the mastery of finance.
I think too, it's like, because we're having this discussion, it makes me broaden my horizons of what I offer. Like I'm thinking, oh, I should have a subscription to like a back-end membership site. So it has me, if I think in accrual, it has me future forecasts to create different decisions in my business to have recurring revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for like, the end of the year is coming, and I know that for the next 6 months, I do have some money coming. Well, I have money coming from clients that are doing a 6-month program. Would it be better than for year end to do an accrual basis? And does that mean that you're recognizing that money in December for what's going to come in for the next 3 months in the new year? Do you recognize that this year in an accrual business?
It depends. We need to know a little bit more probably about how everything is structured in the business specifically. As you'd look at it from there's the operations of the business, and then there's the tax side of things. When you look at taxes, things like that, that's always going to be cash based. And that's going to be kind of a different scenario. Whereas as an example, let's say I've got a big expense that I know is going to be accrued over the next 2 years. It's going to be, equal installments for the next 2 years in monthly basis. And it's a big, I don't know, 20,000 or something like that. From a tax perspective, we could book it in December, so that from a tax perspective, we're taking that expense in December. But we're going to recognize it from an accrual standpoint as an operational expense over the course of the next 2 years on a monthly basis. That can happen in accrual basis. In cash basis, it becomes a little bit harder to do that type of a calculation.
Okay, thank you.
In my situation where I do e-commerce, I do cash basis, but I also track the actual sales. That's kind of where drives my forecast, not necessarily money in the bank. So I use cash basis from an accounting perspective, but I get much more up-to-date numbers by just looking at my different sales channels and use that to calculate forecast and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So would you recommend just making that shift? Just like clicking that over in QuickBooks? I mean,
my recommendation is have a chat with your CPA and work through that transition with them, with your bookkeeper and or your CPA. They'll be able to kind of navigate you through that. Some will be easier than others. That's kind of why I say it. I will tell you, we made the shift last year. It probably took 3 months with the accountant we were using to make that shift. It was not as easy as just flipping the switch in QuickBooks. There was a lot more to it to ensure that things were booked appropriately. You will likely, if you've got a bookkeeper that's really good at doing cash accounting, but they're not super adept at accrual accounting, may require you to, look for alternate solutions when it comes to who you hire for bookkeeping and or CPA work. So it's important to kind of address those with your financial professionals. Highly recommend that you have one that we can go through context and understanding it all. But when it comes to tax time, proper books, all of that kind of stuff, having a proper CPA and bookkeeper in place, they're worth their weight in gold when they're highly skilled. All right, so let's talk about the financial statements, kind of make sure that we're all on the same page on what they are and why we look at them. And we've got about 12, 13 minutes left. I want to make sure that I'm respectful and keep us on time today. So the first one is the income statement of the profit and loss. So when you look at this particular statement, it's going to have things like your sales, your revenue, and then you're going to have your variable cost, oftentimes your cost of goods sold. That's going to give you your gross profit, which is your gross margin. Then you have your fixed costs. And then at the end, you have your net profit. This is generally how they're going to be structured. Some of you may have variable costs, some of you may not. Some of you may have variable costs that are not being counted as variable costs at this point. But we look at variable costs or cost of goods being expenses that you have because you have sales. The inventory that you have when you sell something. If you buy something for $100 and sell it for $200, you'll book that $100 expense when you make that sale, because you wouldn't have had that expense had you not gone to sell that thing. Fixed cost or overheads, as an example, would be lease payments or rent or your phone bill, things like that you're going to have regardless of you make any sales or not. Like, you still have these expenses that you're on the hook for. Those are going to be your overheads. Gross profit comes before fixed cost, and then net profit, also known as your EBITDA, or earnings before interest, depreciation, taxes, etc. That's going to be kind of the bottom line. That is the actual profit number for your business. Pause there. P&L. Sounds like everyone's at least kind of taking a look at a basic one on a consistent basis. What questions do you all have about the P&L or the income statement? What are things that you've seen in your own that you're like, I have questions on and I just need to understand it better?
I do. We used to do, because we're trees, if we make a sale, we've got to pay contractors, we've got to pay anything like that, obviously materials. But we also may have to go buy chains for a chainsaw. However, even if we don't make a sale, we still have to upkeep our tools and equipment. So does that fit into it? And it's a variable cost, honestly, because it's not like a truck payment. Where do you suggest that go? Because we can't align that chain to one customer because we don't just use a chain for one customer.
Good question. Most of the time that's going to fall under your overheads or fixed costs because it's part of equipment maintenance. If you needed to do that consistently, like you had to have a new chainsaw every single time that you had a job, then we could probably make the argument for it to be in the cost of goods. Probably the biggest thing to remember when it comes to fixed cost versus variable cost is variable can be a little misleading. Some of your overheads are inherently variable, like they will change or fluctuate a little bit month over month. A great example of this is like utilities. My energy bill may not be the same last month as it is this month. Like there is fluctuations with it, even though it's an expense that I have regardless. So it is an overhead or a fixed cost. Usually equipment maintenance, things like that, tends to fall more into the fixed cost piece. Depending on how consistently it's happening and things like that, you could make some arguments either way. But most of the time it's going to fit under fixed cost over cost of goods because you don't have that, or you're going to have that expense regardless just to maintain the equipment versus I only have it because I made 1 or 2 or 5 sales this month.
Okay.
Good question. Other examples or questions that you'd like to know a little bit about when it comes to the income statement?
This might be something to do with my accountant, but just when I was filling out my book for the first time doing it for tomorrow's meeting and stuff, under net operating income, then I have event income. This is so for total other income. I've got event income and gratuity, but I'm not going to include gratuity in my income because that's for all my employees. But my event stuff is to mine. So why are those together? I just subtract that 50K out for gratuity. I don't understand why those are the same classification.
Yeah.
One goes here, one goes here.
It's a definitely a good question to kind of ask your accountant why it's split out that way and see if they have a reasoning for it.
Okay.
And maybe they'll give you a really solid answer. If you've got alternate income, I'd probably have that under sales. It would just be a different line item under sales, especially if it's fairly consistent and there's things that, it's part of the business. Usually, in my experience, other income tends to be things like all of a sudden we had interest income from
I have some interest
a bank account, or we had cash back income from a credit card, or things like that tends to fall into that a little bit more. I think you could have the gratuity, things like that may fit there. I've seen that one kind of handled a few different ways. Ultimately, I would ask the question with your accountant, just kind of get their perspective on why it's split out that way.
Okay.
But from an operating standpoint, kind of what makes sense for the business for you to make decisions, because tax basis is going to be different than how you operate. And revenue is revenue, and I would count it as revenue, would be my thing from an operation standpoint.
Okay. Well, I just hired Greg I hired y'all's accountant as my accountant, so I'll put it on him to figure out.
Oh yeah. He's phenomenal. He will definitely give you some really good answers on it.
Yeah, we just met recently and we did a lot of forecasting and figuring out what I can pay my employees and stuff. And he's
Sweet.
fast, but he's good.
Yeah, he is. He's probably one of the best I've seen in a while that understands business very well. That's fantastic. Alex, question or thought?
You had just mentioned interest from bank accounts, and I'm wondering where that falls. Revenues?
Yeah, usually I tend to see it under other income, which falls below net income or net operating income. It's a little bit more complex at this point. Usually it falls there because unless you've got hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in the account, likely it's a pretty small income line.
Right.
So it tends to fall below the net operating income. I know we're just talking net profit as general on the slides here, but getting more granular, there will be things like net operating income, which is essentially this net profit number, and then net income will have some additional things taken out or added back in, and that so it's going to kind of usually falls within there.
Okay.
So let's talk balance sheet. We've got 5 minutes left. Balance sheet. I'm just going to get all of these up here. Whoops. Traditionally is going to have assets, liabilities, and equity, or the assets balance with the liabilities and equity. That's kind of the reason it's called a balance sheet. It's usually starting with the most liquid assets first, down to the least liquid assets. And on liabilities, seems to be the ones that are due most earliest to the ones that have the longest maturity date. Kind of that's how a balance sheet tends to be structured. So you'll traditionally see things like current assets first. So this will be things like your bank accounts, accounts receivable, prepaids, other things like that. And then it shifts into fixed assets, which are going to be office equipment. It could be leasehold improvements. It could be vehicles that you own. It could be things like that. And then intangible assets, which could be things like goodwill. On the other side, or once you get through the assets and you move into liabilities, you're going to start with current liabilities, which are traditionally things that are due within 1 year. So you'll have accounts payable, usually credit cards fall into this segment, loans that are due within the next year. As like PPP loans a couple years ago, that fit kind of in here because they were usually due within that same year. And then you have long-term liabilities, which can be bank loans, could be your startup loan, it could be a loan back to you as the owner, and then whatever is remaining in that equation, assets minus liabilities, is going to give you then your equity. And yes, it is possible to have negative equity if you owe more than you own. That's a balance sheet. Very simply put, I know there's way more complexity we can get into it that we just won't have time to today. But what questions do you have on the balance sheet with regards to kind of what you've seen in your own business, or just general questions around it after going through the basics here this morning?
I have a question. So it's more general because I don't have employees, but I've been at companies that had PTO, accrued PTO, and would that go on the balance sheet?
Yes, it could.
Because I made a thing about having to burn off certain amount at the end of before the end of the year.
Yes,
it depends if you pay it out or not pay it out, and if they lose it, don't lose it, and it can be an asset, it can be a liability. It depends on your own corporate policy procedures around that.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good way to explain it. Thank you, Richard. A lot of different ways to kind of look at that. Another thing that I didn't throw on here is if you have deferred revenue, that can fit on the balance sheet. So let's say you've got services that are rendered each month, but you've got somebody that pays quarterly, especially if you're on an accrual basis. You may accrue those second 2 months as they occur. The remainder fits onto the balance sheet as deferred revenue as an asset. So there's way more complexities. This is just kind of the very basics of what you might see on yours. And then as your business continues to develop and grow, you may see some additional line items and things like that on each of your balance sheets.
What are retained earnings?
Retained earnings essentially is part of your equity. So like what piece is retained back for you as the owner. That's what typically fits in there, because that also tends to be the area that you could see negative equity. Depends on how your balance sheet is structured, but that tends to be kind of the piece of it is what's your value or your retained earnings within the business as the owner.
Because I have owners pay above that, and that's not payroll, that's like dividends and then retained earnings. So that's what's left over kind of after. I don't.
For the most part, yeah. So it's
Could take that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's probably the simplest way is when you look at the balance sheet has to balance, right? That's the whole point of it. So there has to be a line item for if I have $1 million in assets and I only owe 500,000 on it. I mean, I've got 500,000 in equity. I've taken out 50,000 of it. Where does the rest of that fall? It's got to fall in that equity section.
Gotcha.
Cool. Statement of cash flow, super quick with this, and then we'll get into kind of the last steps for today. Statement of cash flow is traditionally broken down into 3 segments: cash from operating activity, cash from investing activity, and cash from financing activity. Most of you will be mostly familiar with operating. It's all the things that are happening in your business to generate income and expenses and all of that kind of stuff. Cash from investing is going to be investments back into long-term equipment. So I take this much cash and I'm buying a vehicle or whatever it could be. And then cash from financing is like loan payments. You don't traditionally see loan payments on your P&L. So this is where you would see those things actually take place. So if I've got $1,000 in debt service that I pay every single month, we're going to see that here as loan payments from financing activity. You may see the interest payments on your P&L, but you will not see the principal payments. You'll see those things on the cash flow statement and in reduction to the loan balance on the balance sheet, which is why it's important to be looking at all 3 of them, because that is a cash thing that is happening in your business that's not captured on your P&L. All right, so I'm going to get into the how we get started, and I'll just open up for kind of top lessons, any additional questions for those that you want to stick around for an extra couple minutes before 10:45 starts with the next one. To get started in all of this stuff when it comes to finance and getting mastery with it, it's measuring for 6 weeks. Measure everything for 6 weeks. Don't try to change anything. Measure consistently for 6 weeks. Recommendation is at minimum weekly. Measure everything on a week over week basis. My recommendation would be day by day, which seems insanely tedious at first, but it will give you incredible insight into what's happening in your business, and it will allow you then to get in the habit of doing these things, and eventually you can shift to week by week. Eventually you can get to only monthly and then maybe even quarterly as you master this process. But we start with measuring everything for a minimum of 6 weeks, doing it at least weekly, preferably daily. You start with, if you don't have a P&L, you don't have all that stuff set up, start with your bank statements and your tax returns. Look at everything that you own and everything that you owe and put it into a makeup or a mock-up of a P&L and a mock-up of a balance sheet based on the things we just went through. Start with 1 month and then go back and do the previous 12 months. That's how we get started with this process. Alex, question.
So my business is a little bit different than the retail model, and I don't get paid every day. I don't take in money every day, but I take in large chunks of money, at least once a month, if not several other times a month. So I don't know that day by day really makes sense for me. Would you say maybe more like week by week?
I would still maybe do day by day to start. Now you may have some days where nothing happens, but you may have other days where every Wednesday there's an expense that comes out, even if there's no revenue. And then when you do it that way, at least for 1 month, you can start to see, hey, it tends to be about the 10th of every month that this expense comes out. And it tends to be about the 12th of every month that I get paid approximately this much. And you start to see those trends on a day-to-day basis, which will allow you then to get more consistent with accuracy on a week-by-week basis. That's why I recommend starting with daily. But to your point, there may not be much activity. It may take you literally 60 seconds to go through and say, all right, there's all my transactions. There's nothing. I'm done. I can move on. But I would get in the habit of it is really more the emphasis behind why we go to that level of granularity.
Yeah. And that you just mean like just taking note of it mentally, not necessarily doing anything, right?
I'd recommend marking it down somewhere, spreadsheet, wherever. Could be just directly in QuickBooks and making sure that everything's like managed and you look at it daily. Whatever's easiest for you. Most manual process would be just pulling up an Excel spreadsheet, looking at it day over day.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do personally. I do it daily. It's written on a weekly spreadsheet. So like the column is just weekly, but I'll update it daily.
Okay.
Good questions. So very quickly, I'll have you write down your top lessons and the homework from today. And then if you want to share a couple as we wrap out here, I know we're technically 5 minutes over, and we got to get started on the next session here in 10 minutes. So very quickly, I want you to write down what are your top 3 lessons from this morning session, and the homework that's up on the screen. Get and do your financial statements for November. If you are getting them consistently, audit them to make sure that they are accurate. Once you have that, do the same for the last 12 months so that you've got a full set of financials that you can go look at for trends. My recommendation, I know I said 6 weeks is the place to get started. My recommendation would be that you do weekly tracking of income expenses for 3 months. Get in the habit of it and really know what's going on in your business. So top 3 lessons, write them down quickly, write down the homework items. And if you have to jump off, go for it. I know you've got 9 minutes now, so write those down, and at least before you go, throw in one top lesson in the chat.